All right, well, we want to welcome you to our third annual VegFest Houston. We're very thrilled to welcome our next guest speaker, who is a friend of mine and a colleague, Professor Alan Clune. He is an esteemed professor of philosophy and applied ethics at Sam Houston State University. He's also a graduate of State University of New York at Buffalo. And Alan is the organizer of the Woodlands Vegan Meetup Group, and he's also a committee member on Vegan Society P.E.A.C.E. He and I have protested together in years past at the circus and rodeo, so we go back a ways. And he is a vegan. He's also got a passion for raw vegan cuisine and abolitionist animal rights philosophy. I'm very honored to introduce my friend, Professor Alan Clune.
Today I'm going to be talking about animals and ethics, and specifically about the idea of cruelty-free animal products and whether those are likely to be the case. And I'm going to focus mostly on the chicken industry, the layer hen industry, and the dairy industry. And we're going to do some philosophy. And we're going to talk about what has become known as a kind of dichotomy between people who are abolitionists and those who are welfarists. And as the title may indicate, the welfarists aren't going to fare very well in my talk. So I'll start now. So humane societies of the United States, humane societies in general, adopt utilitarianism. And utilitarianism is the ethical theory that states that one ought to act such as to produce the greatest happiness or the least suffering for the greatest number. And we see my little pig here. He says, yeah, happiness, that's nice. So he's pretty excited about that. The focus becomes on less suffering. And this is what happens when most people hear about animal rights or animal welfare or the animal and ethics debate in general. They hear that, well, there's so much suffering in the industry. So that becomes the idea that the suffering is the bad part. This sort of focus on suffering leads to welfarism. And I like to just say as a side note, a lot of times people will watch a video, YouTube video, or some kind of video where an employee at a factory farm or at a slaughterhouse is abusing an animal. And the idea is to convince people you shouldn't eat meat, right? But unfortunately, the response to that is often, well, that's just an anomalous case. You know, that's not a systematic part of the process. We have a rogue employee, right? One of the things I want to say is that even if there weren't any rogue employees, even if those videos of the employees kicking chickens around or electrocuting pigs and when they shouldn't be and things like that, even if those videos didn't exist and we stopped doing that, there'd still be a whole lot of cruelty left over. And I want to show that even the organizations that certify that the animals have been raised humanely, even if their guidelines are followed, there's still a whole lot of cruelty left over. So that's where I'm sort of going with this in general. So anyway, focus on less suffering. Suffering leads to welfarism. And the pigs said, so, well, who wouldn't vote for welfare? I mean, we all want welfare. So welfarism says this: the fix for the moral problem of farm animals is that we can keep using animals for food as long as we make them more comfortable while we're using them. Okay? And the pig is feeling less comfortable now. So we have, okay, make them more comfortable. We look a little closer into that. So what really arises out of making them more comfortable and the idea that we ought to? Well, you end up with a kind of partnership. The agricultural business, what they did at one point is they sort of said, well, let's embrace this. Let's embrace the idea that we also care about animal suffering. And then sort of we can kind of squash this idea I mean, people's consciences, weigh on them when they hear about animal suffering. So you end up with partnerships where the agricultural people get together with the Humane Society and they agree to certain changes that they can claim, and they're usually very marginal changes that don't cost them any money. But they can claim they've bettered the lives of animals, and then people's consciences out in the world get relieved, and they go out and they buy more animal products. So you get these partnerships. Humane societies say basically to the ag businesses, we'll boycott you unless you increase animal welfare. And then the animal agricultural people say, yeah, welfare, that's the ticket. So they're going to embrace it, or quote, embrace animal welfare. And so you end up with partnerships like, for example, this partnership that recently was entered into by the Humane Society of the United States, the Humane Society of the United States, and the United Egg Producers. The Humane Society of the United States agreed to a federal bill for enriched cages for layer hens by the end of 2030. Even though in the past, the same Humane Society stated that an enriched cage barely improves the quality of life for hens, okay? Yet they're agreeing to this, all right? Now, when you, if in fact this goes through and we get these enriched cages, the Humane Society can claim victory. So why would this happen? Why would this partnership develop? How can we explain it? Well, one way, and I think this is probably the right way to explain it, is that the Humane Society can claim a victory and use it as a fundraising basis, right? Look at, we've made the lives of farm animals better. They don't mention how marginal it is, but nevertheless they can claim that, and they can send letters out to all their supporters, and they can get more people there. And then the United Egg Partnership, the partnership producers for the United Egg, they can label their eggs as friendly to chickens, ease people's consciences, and sell more eggs, right? So that's one way to explain this. The other way to explain it is that it, which is not a good explanation, as you might expect from my slide here, that it helps chickens. It really doesn't help chickens. It will prevent states from outlawing cages, all the United States. Why? Because it's a federal law. So states will not be able to, so some states want to outlaw all cages and say it has to be free-range chickens, right? But if this federal law goes through, it would be impossible for a state to override that and make it law that there are no cages. And it's cages, again, why it's not a good explanation, is cages are meagerly enriched. And it is really a way federally to keep U.S. hens in cages literally forever. Maybe not literally forever, I mean, strictly speaking. But for as long as we exist, I guess. All right, so this is not a good explanation for the partnership. So I want to move on to what welfarism thinking leads to, and it gives rise to these certifying organizations, such as the Humane Farm Animal Care Organization. And this is their stamp of certification, and it has been endorsed by the HSUS and the ASPCA. And they have supposedly standards that are better than ordinary standards, and may be marginally better than ordinary standards. But we're going to see that even with animal products with that stamp on it, there's a whole lot of cruelty still involved, So here's what they say. Certified Humane requires, this is from their website, and okay, let me just say, chickens must be able to be free from cages, stand normally, stretch their wings, take dust baths, and perch, okay? Now, it seems to me that this isn't conceding a whole lot, right? I mean, if someone told you, well, we're gonna make you free from cages as a human, We can allow you to stand normally, and you can stretch. You can take a regular bath. Or they also have sit quietly here, and you can also sit quietly. We're told that's what you get, humans, right? Would you be happy with that? And it's really, it's like, thanks a lot. If I was a chicken, I'd be like, well, thank you so much. I can stand. I can stand normally. Well, thanks. I can stretch my wings. Oh, you're not going to put me in a cage. Thanks. But where you end up isn't much better than that. And this sit quietly thing, I don't even get it. Once you see what really is required, the idea that any chicken is going to sit quietly for more than like a fraction of a second is unbelievable, dubious. So this is what's not required. This is an image from their site. Okay, this isn't required at all. Okay, so don't imagine that certified humane means chickens running around in the grass. It doesn't. All that is required, and this is an image from their site. I'm not sure if the light's getting in your way, but you can see how crowded it is there, right? Basically they can have a barn with 10,000 chickens stuffed in it. No cages, but you have 10,000, you're in there with 10,000 chickens. You don't have very much room to do anything, right? And the stench from all the gases produced by the chickens is in there, that they're breathing, a lot of toxic fumes and things like that. So it's very crowded, and maybe you can stretch your wings once in a while and stand up relatively normally and take a dust bath. But besides that, you have like 9,999 other chickens running around you all the time until you die. So humanely, this is kind of the stuff that I want to stress, is that humanely raised food, this is the stuff that cannot be avoided no matter whether it's certified humane or not, okay? This is going to happen, okay? They trim, they call them trimming, the beaks of the small chicks right after they're born. And this is really like having your nose cut off. Because have you ever got punched in the nose and you know how many nerve endings are in your nose? Well, that's roughly similar to the beaks of chickens. So this hurts, all right? Yet this is, you can have a certified humane symbol on your eggs, and this kind of thing goes on routinely. And they do it because the chickens are so close to each other that they're going to peck each other to death if they don't cut their beaks off. Number two, in the layer hen industry, they discard male chicks. Of course, you have certain hens that are giving birth to other chickens, so you can keep your business going, right? Well, half of them are boys, and boys are not very good at producing eggs. So what do they do with them? Well, unfortunately, what they do is they, what do I say up here? They discard them. They just either macerate them alive, and that just means they put them through a grinder alive. Or they just put them in a dumpster. They can't get out, so they just end up dying in there from either being smothered by other birds or just from lack of food and water and things. And sometimes they gas them to death. And again, this label can certainly be on the eggs of producers that do this. So again, a whole lot, there's cruelty involved, cruelty that is not going to be eliminated by the standards of these organizations. And this is going to happen no matter what, no matter how humane supposedly the industry gets. Okay, a couple other things that cannot be avoided in terms of cruelty. Crowded barn conditions, which I already talked about. Short lives. They live only 2 years versus the normal 10 years that they could live. And they really end emaciated. I mean, you have these hens that are made to produce eggs as quickly and in the largest quantity as possible their whole lives. You know, that's a whole lot of calcium to be drawn out of that bird, and they end up often fragile boned with broken bones, and they die. A lot of them die just on the floor of those barns that you talk about, just from being emaciated so much. And they quickly gather them up and slaughter them and turn them into cat and dog food. Or they're slaughtered and buried in a landfill. So that's not too, you know, those aren't happy chickens, right? I'm going to move to the dairy industry. And again, I'm just talking about humanely raised, quote, food cannot avoid the following sorts of cruelty, no matter what, no matter whether they have this label or not. These just can't be avoided. First of all, dairy cows spend most of their lives pregnant and being milked. Okay? Now, what the idea of what that does to your body, I mean, it emaciates your body. Okay? You're either constantly having milk taken out of you or you're pregnant. And they have what they call, to make these cows pregnant, they actually have something that they themselves, the ag industry, not in their official documents, but they call it the rape rack, to make the cows pregnant again as soon as possible. And then they're pregnant again, so they spend their whole life like that. Dairy cows have their children taken away shortly after birth. This is something that, you know, some people say, so what, you know, but you know, if you watch when it happens, the mother cows, they wail and they fight to keep their child, because they normally raise their child. And the baby also does not want to be taken away from its mother, and it's very clear in their behavior and the vocalizations that they make that they're very upset. And the mother will actually keep looking for its child in and around where she is, just kind of walking around looking for days after the child is taken away from her. So again, you could have this certified humane label, yet this kind of thing happens. And you might also have guessed, analogously to the chickens, dairy cows become emaciated by this process. And the word in the industry is called spent, a spent dairy cow. And they live only a fraction of their lives, dairy cows, 6 years versus a possible 25. And again, it's because they become emaciated. Their organs start to break down, their bones start to break down, and they're called spent. And at that point, they quickly load them up and send them to slaughter, and that's where most dairy hamburgers come from, dairy cows. So again, you could have this label, yet look what's going on. And we're not talking about isolated incidents of cruelty by employees. And of course, there's the veal industry. Most people have heard about the veal industry. Males born to dairy cows, of course, males, just like male chickens don't produce eggs, male cows don't produce milk. So what do you do with them? Well, and they don't grind them up in grinders, because there's actually an industry that's grown up, the veal industry, and they sell them to the veal industry, or they do it themselves in another part of their business. And they're castrated very young without any anesthesia with something like this. I like to get through this as quickly as possible when I'm talking about that one. They're fed an artificial diet, I think it's low in iron, so that their flesh will be extra soft. And they're slaughtered at 18 weeks. And again, that's a being that had a lifespan of 25 years ahead of it before it is slaughtered. So the promise of welfarism. If welfarism aims at humane, it is not promising for the reasons outlined in the preceding. And like I said again, these aren't isolated incidents of cruelty. This is the cruelty that's woven into the fabric of the industries. And it's not, no matter how much certification you get, this isn't going to change. It just has to happen, right? But I say that I'm going to wax philosophical, okay? And I say that the problem runs really deeper than this, okay? There's an actual philosophical problem here with welfarism. Because welfarism, remember, is the idea that we can use the animals without being cruel to them. And the whole idea would be, in theory, well, I think it's in the next slide. In theory, the idea would be that you are able to create really, really nice lives for animals, which hasn't even made any progress in many years, the attempt to do that. But anyway, the welfarists, I hold that the welfarists must hold that raising animals for food is unethical when animal suffering creates lives not worth living. Okay, and that's their philosophy, right? I mean, it's because their lives are not worth living that people, feel some empathy for these animals and want to stop the suffering of the animals, right? So if their lives aren't worth living, then the welfarists would have to claim that this is unethical. So I say, suppose that the welfarists could achieve success, okay? Let's say that they could be successful. Farm animals raised with lives worth living. Plenty of room to roam around and play, socialize with fellow beings of the same species. They have good quality food, and a lot of sunshine, fresh air, and space. And they live a kind of like a romantic life on the prairie, okay? Let's suppose that we could achieve that. So let's say we could. I'm going to claim that that's not going to help us, okay? Even if we could do it, and of course, my pig friend is with me. He says, excuse me if I'm skeptical. So, if we achieve success, farm animals raised with lives worth living, this is the paradox, I think, of welfarism. Because then using these animals would steal from them lives worth living. Right? So you get them to the point where their lives are worth living, right? And then you rob that life from them, and very early, right? So here's the paradox stated here. Either the welfarist strategy is a failure or it's a success. A failure creates animals with lives not worth living. And success destroys animals with lives worth living. And neither outcome is humane. So it's kind of like, I'm going to give you this great life, and then I'm going to kill you. It's like, well, thanks. Thanks a lot. Great idea. So for welfarism, even success is a moral failure. So even if welfarism could work perfectly, you'd have this paradox, is that now you've given them lives worth living, now it's wrong to take away a life that's worth living. So the solution to the paradox, I say, is abolition. And abolitionists say that we should stop using animals primarily for human use, and just stop it all. Stop eating them, stop researching on them, stop using them in entertainment, etc., etc. And the animal rights, the animal rights side, the abolitionist side, gives value to the life of the animal as well as its quality of life. So the welfarist is saying, as long as it doesn't suffer, we can take its life. And the rights theorist is going to say, no, if it's not suffering, and you don't make it suffer, that's good. But taking its life is also wrong. But the welfarist says, no, you can take the life, you just can't make them suffer while you're raising them. So that's sort of a kind of mark of distinction between welfarists versus abolitionists. And that's it. Thank you. So I don't know in terms of, do we have time for questions? Yes? Okay. All right. Okay, if anyone has questions. Yes?
What about dog and cat food?
What about dog and cat food? Do you want my personal? I would, first of all, dogs very easily can be vegan, and you can visit the V-Dog booth that we have with vegan dog food. There's no problem with the dogs being vegan. Cats are more difficult. And the reason that it's more difficult with cats is because of the following, from what I understand. cats need protein that is high in acidity. And vegetable protein is low in acidity. Of course, that's something good about vegetable protein from our perspective as humans. It has low acid levels, So you're more alkaline, right, eating vegetable protein. But cats need acidic protein, and the reason why they need it is for urinary tract reasons. So if you give them only vegetable protein, they're likely to form crystals in their urinary tract, which can block them, and it can kill male cats. But for female cats, it just makes them very uncomfortable, and they won't pee in their litter box. You'll find them peeing all over the house, because they think it's the location that's causing the pain, so they'll change locations and pee around. But theoretically, can you make cat food that's vegan? You can. I mean, I talked to a guy at Evolution Food. Is it Evolution that has the pet? And he said one of the things you can do is add some vitamin C powder to the food. It increases is it ascorbic acid, right? So it increases the acidity of the protein. But you know what? I feed my cat meat because you know what? It's dangerous not to for them, and I actually tried it with another cat, and she developed crystals. She was fixed, and we got her healthy again. But I was just like, if they need it, if you need it to live, if you need it to be safe and healthy, then do it. And is it theoretically possible to have a vegan cat? It is, I believe. It's just you got to do a lot of research and do it right, and you might have to make your own food for the cat. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes? Yeah, I mean, there are veterinarians that are kind of vegan conscious, but you're right. I mean, the standard education is not. And you're right about research on animals. There are alternatives available, and they're becoming more and more sophisticated. They're even using genetics of animals to do the testing, or they're using in vitro tests on human skin cells and things like that. It's becoming more and more sophisticated. But the thing is, though, there's a whole lot of people making a whole lot of money on researching on animals, and they're just not coming around because there's so much money keeping the momentum in the direct path of using animals that's very difficult to get people to change. And another reason is that if you're a professor doing research on animals and you want a grant, the grant people want data, and they want data that they're used to looking at. So there's a problem from that perspective too, is the people giving out the grants want to see the data from research on animals. Why? Because that's what they've always used, and that's what they've always looked at to determine whether or not you did a good study or not. And so the momentum is just so far in the other direction, and things move slowly. Knowledge gets out there slowly, and I believe that it's going to get better, and we're going to use more alternative methods of researching rather than using animals. But it's going to take time. Yes.
Hi. So
Hi.
I'd like you to address, if you would, sort of the philosophical and moral question about long-term effects of some of the things that you talked about. So particularly humans domesticated animals, 12,000 years BC or something like that. Some of those species probably would not survive if humans stopped taking care of them.
Right.
So for example, the cow might go extinct or something.
Yeah.
If we did not use it in,
Right. I mean,
and even with cats and dogs, is there? I mean, you talked about the question: should we kill animals? But the larger, maybe deeper question, in a sense, is: should we use animals at all for anything?
Yep.
So if you could just address some of those things, that'd be interesting.
On the domesticated animals, sure. If we stop eating cows, there are going to be a lot fewer cows around. But on the one hand, whereas when you remove a wild species from the environment, it may disrupt the environment, so there may be ecological questions involved with that. But when you remove a domesticated animal from the environment, you actually improve the environment in our case because of the way we produce. Animals produce so much environmental waste, right? So in terms of environmental ethics, I don't think it would cause a problem with disrupting the ecosystem by removing cows or layer hens. And so, of course, you're saying they might disappear. On the one hand, I might say, well, so what? But on the other hand, you know, I think that we'll probably have a lot of these places that we have now, like animal sanctuaries, the farm sanctuary, for instance. You know, we'd have places where people could go and visit cows and chickens and pigs happily living out on a real farm with a whole lot of land. And so we wouldn't have to get rid of them. Perhaps we would control their populations, but we wouldn't be producing and killing 10 billion animals a year in the United States like we are now. What was the second one? Cats and dogs. Yeah, should we use them at all? Well, you know, cats and dogs, you know, I don't know. You know, I love my cat, you know, she's, you know, and she loves me. I can tell she does. She seems really happy. You know, it's sort of, for me, it's sort of like, is the relationship coercive? You know, is it a coercive, manipulative, abusive relationship or not? And if it's not, I myself am not so much against having, still having animal companions, right? Of course, you know, there are people who mistreat them, and that's wrong. But if it's a mutually reciprocal relationship, they like being with you and you like being with them, there's nothing wrong with a cross-species friendship. I mean, there are actually cross-species friendships that developed by accident out in the wild too, you know, or at zoos and things like that, where you have, I don't know, a chimpanzee and a turtle become friends or something, you know, all sorts of stories like that, of those things happening. So if it's not a coercive or manipulative relationship, then I'm not so worried about that, you know. So, yes?
Living in Texas, I feel like quite the minority being vegan. I just turned vegan. I've been vegetarian for a long time. I just turned vegan.
I believe you.
How long do you think it'll take to change the paradigm? I just read the China study.
Yeah.
And all the information in that.
Right.
How long do you think it'll take to change the whole concept of paradigm of eating meat to vegans?
Okay, 773 years. I don't know. I just know that, you know, since all this really started roughly around the time Peter Singer wrote his book Animal Liberation, right? It was 1975-ish. So we're now like 38 years away from that, and from that time to now, I mean, there are millions and millions and millions of vegans now in the world, around the world. So, you know, there's been a change, you know, and I really can't predict how long it'll take, you know. But I suspect there'll be a point in time where meat eating starts going down really fast, and then it'll level off again. There'll be some holdouts, you know, and then they'll be made to feel so guilty that they'll stop, you know. And just like smokers now, right, in the United States, it's sort of like we had this kind of like, we had this program to show everyone how bad smoking was, and then it just dropped off. But now there's some holdouts out there, you know. But we're pushing them out of the public scene even now, you know. We're pushing them out. Hopefully they'll see the light. Not that it's necessarily unethical to smoke. I'm just trying to draw some kind of parallel in terms of campaigns to stop something. Yeah. Anyone else? Yes. You know, this is what I think. I think that there may be a difference between wild and domesticated animals. So wild animals, yeah, we've taken them out of a situation where they could have lived their lives freely in a forest or a jungle or something. Domesticated animals are different in that their environment has become ours, and ours theirs in some sense. So, so this is what I think. You know, if you leave dogs out on their own, they end up dead pretty soon, or they end up with a lot of. They can't take care of themselves very well, like cats can. So with dogs, I'd say, well, you know, dogs and humans kind of go together. in the natural way. You know, so you can make the case that humans are part of the natural environment of dogs now, the domesticated dogs, right? Not wolves, though, you know, but dogs. So we would be part of their environment, and they'd be part of ours. Cats, on the other hand, cats actually can survive better than dogs out in the wild. So, so it might be a different answer depending on the animal you're talking about. So I have a hard time with that because I just really enjoy my relationship with my cat. And she seems to really like me. But I know what you're saying, though. I know right now when we have overpopulation, it's doing a good deed to have the animals, right? But when we don't have overpopulation anymore, should we breed them to then keep them in captivity, you know? This is always a tough one for me, you know? Oh, I think that, absolutely, I think that we should stop producing so many animals. I'm just not sure I'm on the same page with you as having to stop animal companions and having friends across species in the future. But I'm certainly against all the breeding that goes on. There's just too many animals, and they're suffering because of it, you know. So, yes.
Well, kind of in response to what she said, have you heard of the program, I don't know if there's one here in Houston, but catching feral cats,
Yes.
sterilizing them, and then releasing them again?
Yeah, spay, neuter release, SPR, or something.
Yeah.
SNR, sorry. Yes, I've heard of that, and I think that's better than putting them in a... She's talking about spaying or neutering cats that are wild that you find, and then releasing them back out, because it's so hard to find homes for them anyway, and cats actually do pretty well. So is it better to put them in a shelter where they're going to be euthanized, or just spay or neuter them and release them out back so that they can continue to live their lives? I'm actually for that kind of program because I think it's better than killing them. Yeah, so what she's saying is that, you know, even though she has a cat flap, so to speak, where her cats can leave and they can go to, you know, Oregon if they want, okay? But they don't. They go hang out in the neighborhood and then they come back. So she's saying she can make the case that she's not really keeping them captive at all if you do it in this way, that they come back because they love her. They're like children, you know, you let your children out to play. They used to do this when there weren't all these crazy people out there. I used to just go out and play, you know, when I was a kid. And my parents didn't worry about me being abducted or anything. But you know, the idea is that they let me go out. Hopefully they were expecting me to come back. And I did come back, you know, and so I mean, does it make a difference that they choose to come back? They do their own thing, and then they come home and they hang out with you. Yeah, it's an interesting point.
And just to follow that up, I'm so old, when I was growing up here in Houston, we used to do that with our dogs too. And
Okay.
when we were,
We did too. When I was growing up, the dogs roamed the neighborhood.
they would come back.
Yeah.
Just not
Yep.
safe.
Right. Not safe.
I think that we can make the case, and I think, isn't there also a fair amount of research that the relationship between historically and prehistorically, the relationship between humans and dogs developed?
We seem to co-evolve. There is research that we co-evolve. And that's what I was getting at when I said that dogs and humans have become a part of their own natural environments, in a sense, too. Yeah, so it's a good point. Are we done? Maybe time for one more question? If anybody? I can't see very well, so oh, now I can.
So Alan, what do we need to do to be abolitionists? What's the best, most ethical thing to do to stop the problems?
Okay, well, stop eating animals. Stop using any animal products like dairy or eggs. Stop wearing leather. Stop wearing fur. Stop wearing wool. All of which I've done it very easily. I mean, there are a lot of alternatives out there. I have a pleather jacket. Looks good, you know. So if you're worried about that, I mean, I look good in that. You think I look good now? You put that jacket on me, I look a lot better. You can also very easily nowadays buy cruelty-free products like soaps, deodorants, dishwashing detergents, all those kinds of in Kroger. You know, you can get this stuff, and you'll see there's a little rabbit on the back of them usually, or they'll say not tested on animals. Because most of those products out there are tested on animals, but there are products not tested on animals and products that don't use animal ingredients. I mean, some of those shampoos and stuff out there have animal ingredients in them, you know. But you can get it at Kroger. You can get products with no animal ingredients, no animal testing. They work just fine. Cosmetics, you can get cosmetics now that are cruelty-free. So you don't need to buy, you know, the most, you know, expensive, crazy cosmetics that are tested on animals. You know, all my detergents and soaps and deodorant and everything is all cruelty-free. So there's a lot you can do. You can't be a perfect vegan, but you can be a good one. Just like you can't be a perfect Christian, but you can be a good one, you know?
Just real quick, that's a label that can be depended on?
What?
I mean, that's a label that can actually be depended on?
You can depend on that, yes.
Okay.
It's a little rabbit. It's called the Humane seal organization or something. And you can look it up. I think it's humaneseal, SEAL.org. And you can learn about it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, I guess we're done. Thank you.